This, in terms of if it were Russia, found out about it in August. Now, the election was in November. That's a lot of time. He did nothing about it.
Talk to him directly and tell him to cut it out.
And he did nothing about it. They say he choked. Well, I don't think he choked. I think what happened is he thought Hillary Clinton was going to win the election, and he said, let's not do anything about it. Had he thought the other way, he would have done something about it.
President Obama talked to Vladimir Putin at a G20 summit in September.
And tell him to cut it out, and there were going to be some serious consequences if he didn't.
Otherwise is simply fake news. Barack Obama went farther, by the way, in that meeting with Vladimir Putin than President Trump is promising to do himself. He's not even promising to bring up election meddling in his bilateral with Vladimir Putin.
He's not even promising to bring up election meddling in his bilateral with Vladimir Putin.
The president opened the meeting with President Putin by raising the concerns of the American people regarding Russian interference in the 2016 election. They had a very robust and lengthy exchange on the subject.
The other thing that was fake news coming from President Trump is when he said, well, I keep hearing it's 17 intelligence agencies that say...
I heard it was 17 agencies. I said, boy, that's a lot. Do we even have that many intelligence agencies, right? Let's check it. And we did some very heavy research. It turned out to be 3 or 4. It wasn't 17.
Russia meddled in the election. I think it's only 3 or 4. Where does that number come from?
Where does that number come from?
As you know, the IC was a coordinated product from 3 agencies, CIA, NSA, and the FBI, not all 17 components of the intelligence community. Those 3.
Where does that number come from?
Those 3.
Where is this 3 or 4 number come from? My suspicion, Chris and Poppy, is that if we go to the administration and ask them for this question, I'm not so sure we're going to get an answer. And if we do get an answer, it'll probably be off camera.
When then President-elect Trump was briefed on this, there were 4 of us.
Where is this 3 or 4 number come from?
There were 4 of us, meaning the directors of NSA, FBI, and CIA, and myself.
This is another example of when the President of the United States says something here in the U.S., referring to the press as fake news, referring to the press in other derogatory terms, other leaders around the world, other governments around the world are listening.
The public gets it, you know. Look, when I go to rallies, they turn around, they start screaming at CNN. They want to throw their placards at CNN, you know.
It's because of the attack of fake news and attacking our network. I just want to ask you, sir.
I'm changing it from fake news, though.
Doesn't that undermine...
Very fake news.
I know, but aren't you...
Okay.
Real news, Mr. President, real news. Having been called fake news myself, that the President of the United States is the king of fake news. Ooh. He is the king of fake news. He said Barack Obama was not born in this country.
Barack Obama was born in the United States, period.
He said Mexicans are rapists and criminals.
And some, I assume, are good people.
We have to give every girl a pregnancy test over 10. This is not a safe journey.
He said Mexicans are rapists and criminals.
Coming from more than Mexico. It's coming from all over South and Latin America, and it's coming probably from the Middle East.
He said that he had the largest inauguration crowd of all time. I mean,
Bullshit.
This was the largest audience to ever witness an inauguration, period, both in person and around the globe. Even the New York Times printed a photograph showing that a misrepresentation of the crowd in the original tweet in their paper, which showed the full extent of the support, depth, and crowd and intensity that existed.
He said that he had the largest inauguration crowd of all time. I mean,
you stand by your statement that was the most watched inaugural address.
Sure, it was the most watched inaugural. When you look at just the one network alone, got 16.9 million people online. Another couple of the networks, there were tens of million people that watched that online. Never mind the audience that was here, 31 million people watched it on television. Combine that with the tens of millions of people that watched it online on a device. It's unquestionable. I don't see any numbers that dispute that. When you add up attendance, viewership, total audience in terms of tablets, phones, on television, I'd love to see any information that proves that otherwise.
And then
so, do you dispute that?
Well, I don't want to get into numbers.
Well, I do.
And I don't want people to think that I'm saying that because, you know, I've got an axe to grind or I'm here to criticize or be political or have an agenda or whatever you were saying earlier.
Bullshit.
it's just a fact.
Bullshit.
We've been saying, there's an apple and there's a banana. We've been sticking to apples. They're throwing out a lot of bananas.
Bullshit.
Why worry about a couple of tweets about crowd sizes?
Because it's not, because that's what I'm saying. You're minimizing the point here, Jim. It's not about one tweet. It's not about one picture. It's about a constant theme. It's about sitting here every time and being told, no, well, we don't think he can do that. He'll never accomplish that. He can't win that. It won't be the biggest. It's not going to be that good. The crowds aren't that big. He's not that successful. The narrative and the default narrative is always negative. And it's demoralizing. And I think that when you sit here and you realize the sacrifice the guy made of leaving a very, very successful business because he really cares about this country, and he wants to, despite your partisan differences, he cares about making this country better for everybody. He wants to make it safer for everybody. And so when you wake up every day and that's what you're seeing over and over again, and you're not seeing stories about the cabinet folks that he's putting or the success that he's having trying to keep American jobs here, yeah, it is a little disappointing. So it's
always going to be positive.
It's not. And sometimes we'll make mistakes. I promise you that. But it's not always got to be negative, Jim. Some days we do the right thing. Some days we are successful. Part of this is saying when we're right, say we're right. When we're wrong, say we're wrong. But it's not always wrong and negative. There's a lot of things that he's done already. A lot of amazing people he's appointed, a lot of success that he's having. And it would be once in a while for someone just to say, report it straight up. He appointed this person, here's their background, not why they're not going to get nominated. Not why it's not going to happen.
He talked about this conservative grievance that they're being discriminated against in social media. The president has, a gazillion Twitter followers. He has a massive presence on Instagram, has a massive presence on Facebook. Conservatives aren't being discriminated and abused on social media. They have just as much of a landscape that they dominate as the left does, and one could argue that they have a much bigger footprint.
Part of the issue is I think, instead of wanting to focus on the president's behavior, they'd rather focus on our reporting on the president's behavior.
Bullshit.
But the problem is that people around the country don't know it's an act. They're not in on the act, and they take what he says very seriously, and they take attacks from Sean Spicer and Sarah Sanders and what they do to us on a daily basis very seriously. They don't have all their faculties in some cases. Their elevator might not hit all floors. My concern is that that a journalist is going to be hurt one of these days. Somebody's going to get hurt.
No, you know what? You're creating violence by your question. You are creating you. And also, a lot of the reporters are creating violence by not writing the truth. The fake news is creating violence. And you know what? The people that support Trump and the people that support us, which is a lot of people, most people, many people, those people know what a story is true and they know what a story is false. And I'll tell you what, if the media would write correctly and write accurately and write fairly, you'd have a lot less violence in the country.
People this sense that all we're doing all day long is bashing the president, when in fact we have to be fact checkers, and so we spend a lot of time simply just fact checking the president.
And fact checking sounds like bashing to a part of the population.
I saw one story recently where they said 9 people have confirmed. There are no 9 people. I don't believe there was 1 or 2 people. 9 people.
He's just a dishonest, deceptive person, and it is how he built in part his media and real estate empire, and it's how he built his political brand.
Of May, there is no other way to describe what the White House is doing these days. Wolf, top officials, including the president, are hiding from the press. And Wolf, just to give you a sense as to what's happening right now, you can hear there is a chorus of boos and other chants from this Trump crowd here in Tampa, Florida. They're saying things like CNN sucks, go home, and fake news. Wolf, obviously, all of those things are false. We're staying right here. We're going to do our job and report on this rally to all of our viewers here tonight. Wolf.